Welcome to the first candidate forum for the 12th District of Illinois. Maybe you've been to our town hall before, but this one's going to be just focused on the 12th District. We have three candidates with us tonight, who you're all familiar with, Dean Pruitt, Brendan Kelly, and David Bequette. They're all going to introduce themselves throughout the event. That way we don't overwhelm people with a block of text. So before each round of questions, each candidate will get a chance to introduce themselves. The way this is going to run is we will have an introduction, then we'll have three questions. These are going to be long-form questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and we will have a timer over here, keeping them in line. Then we'll have a lightning round question, where it's going to be basically a yes or no answer, and then they have 30 seconds to follow up with any brief summaries they'd like to give of their opinion if they want to clarify. I'm going to explain the rules. We want this to be a civil event. Everybody is well aware of the way that we are going to present the people we're opposing. We don't need that tonight. We want to hear your opinions on the issues. That's it. So, rule number one, this is not a debate. You are responding to the moderators. Myself, Chris Baker, and Melissa Longdury. We are members of, Chris is from Indivisible 12. Myself and Melissa are a member of Action Metro East, who are collaborating on this event. Rule number two, no personal attacks. We want you to focus on the issues, not each other tonight. Don't tell us your opponent is inexperienced or part of the establishment. Tell us your views on the issues. We know what the shorthand is for everything, so let's just focus on the issues tonight. Rule number three, answers should be 2 minutes or less, and that's pretty much it. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I want to especially thank Brenda Jones and her son Tony, who set up this event for us. Gave us a nice gift. And I also want to thank the three gentlemen here this evening. And Chris Miller was supposed to be here tonight. He's not able to make it. He's stuck on a plane somewhere, so he's not going to be able to make it tonight. And depending on how tonight goes, this is kind of a dry run. We are as grassroots get. When we decided to do this, we are seeing our democracy kind of under attack, and our prescription for that, our answer is more democracy, not less. We want to hear from every candidate. We want to hear every opinion before we have a chance to choose in November. Sorry, wishing we could go back. But in March. So we are going to have, if this all goes well, we're going to have a second event in December. And then we're going to have a caucus to determine who Action Metro East endorses. I don't know if Indivisible will want to join us in that endorsement. We'll figure that out. But Action Metro East will be hosting a big caucus where we decide for the 13th, the 12th, and the governor's race who we want to endorse as the people of Southern Illinois. And so if you'd like to be involved in those, be sure to like our Facebook pages, Action Metro East and Indivisible IL12, both on Facebook. And let's get this thing going. So, you know what we didn't do is decide well, let's use the order of the straws to decide who goes first.
And then we'll just rotate.
And then we'll rotate who goes first.
I got you.
All right.
So who's introducing?
Again, grassroots. Sorry about that. So the first person to introduce is Dean Pruitt. So Dean, you got 2 minutes to tell everybody your life story.
Should I stand up?
Stand up.
All right. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to go straight to issues. My name's Dean Pruitt. I'm born in Belleville, went to Belleville High School West, went to SWIC, BAC in the old days, went to University of Illinois at Springfield, which was called Sangamon back then, went to graduate school at Washington University in mathematics and physics, made a very clever choice of buying a dump truck and diving into Solar, where I met Bob Castley and Bruce Gary, who were lifelong friends, and after a number of years doing demolition, and 16 years in Jamaica, and 8 years in Russia, I came back here to care for my parents, and one of my clients in Russia, I was commercialized into the Russian Academy of Sciences, and one of my clients was a paleontological institute, and they asked me if I knew anybody who had a museum. And I knew Bob was starting the City Museum in '95 from the first night, and I went to him and I said, hey, you want the dinosaurs for your grand opening? And he says, why don't you come do this with us? So I threw in with him with the City Museum, and no regrets except for Bob's passing, which was about 7 years ago last month, and last week was the 20th anniversary of City Museum, and it now belongs to a billionaire, and they didn't even give a whimper as to who founded it. So that's the take on me. Now I have a farm down in Millstadt, mailing address, Columbia School District. I've got 2,000 walnut trees. I'm building buildings down there, writing mathematics, I'm dealing with my mother's estate, and I've got this long, horrendous battle with that. That's me. Okay, I'm a mathematician. I want to give you some numbers. I want to talk to you about some numbers. Trump's children will benefit $800 million from the new tax plan. Okay, think of that number. How much will your children benefit from it? How much will you benefit? Trump's children will benefit $800 million. Can you even get your mind around that number? It's a big one. We won't see anything of it. If nothing else, we'll be in the 10% bracket and go to the 12% bracket.
10 seconds?
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
That's it.
That's
Okay.
And there we go.
That's your number for the night.
All right. You're not kidding about that grass. All right, thank you very much for that, Dean. I'm going to start with the first question. Again, I'm Chris Baker with Indivisible IL 12. You can recognize us. These are our shirts. You can see them around. We've got them for sale in the back. There's my shameless plug, and that's all I'm going to do. First question of the night. Given the global historical decline in coal usage, we must address the loss of jobs in southern Illinois. For anti-coal people, how do you provide alternate job opportunities to miners who are culturally attached to mining and say they have no interest in retraining programs? And for pro-coal people, how do you respond to critics who point out that the Kemper, Mississippi clean coal plant that recently closed due to being $4.6 billion over budget and is operationally unreliable?
Start with Dean.
We're going to start with Dean, and we're going to work our way down. Next one will start with Brendan, and then
2 minutes.
2 minutes, and
Okay.
we're starting.
Alternative energy produces 1,700% more jobs than fossil fuels. That means if we have solar, wind, geothermal, all these different technologies, we can produce 17 times as many jobs as coal or fossil fuels do. That's the answer for people in the coal field. If they want to retrain, if they want to put up erect wind turbines, if they want to install solar panels, if they want to do backhoe operation, if that's something they're comfortable with, to put in geothermal in houses and retrofit houses, there are answers like that. If they don't want to abandon coal, I honestly don't believe anybody wants to go back down that hole. I can't imagine that anybody, unless they're just like a troglodyte, really wants to go 1,000 feet under the ground and have in a 4-foot space. So if that's their wishes, my answer to them is that coal is necessary for things like carbon black. If nanotechnology takes off, there's a use for coal as anthracite, as metallurgical coals and things for that, but not as polluting fuels.
1 minute.
So that's, I can sum it up that way.
You got it.
Yep.
I don't want to choke you, Dean. This
I
thing.
got some scissors here.
We go around the front.
Thank you.
Grassroots, everybody, grassroots.
All good. All He's good. on the clock. All good.
Ted Mack's original answer.
I'll start my time. Ready? Go.
Here we go.
All right. So I think the first question was about negatively affected coal miners. I think in my time running here in this district, I spent a lot of time in Franklin County, a lot of time in Williamson County, Randolph County, those places where coal mining is a deep part of their history. It's very much part of the identity of the people in the 12th Congressional District. And we made a promise to those folks back in 1945, the federal government did, when Harry Truman said, we will take care of your pensions and we will take care of your health care if you do what we ask you to do, which is to power the 20th century economy. We have to keep those promises. We have to maintain our commitment to those promises and make sure that we don't let those people down. We owe them. Long term, though, we have to think about the fact that this is the 21st century. And just today, the administration actually released a report that said that man is causing global warming, okay? I'm a prosecutor. I believe in evidence. I believe in following the science. And human beings and the emissions of CO2 is what is causing global warming. So we have to continue to move forward with the support of renewable energies and clean energies. And one of the things I think would help those folks that have been disaffected by the downturn in the coal economy is to make sure that those subsidies, those investments that we're making in clean energy are targeted to those areas where you have folks that have lost their jobs because the coal mining industry has taken a downturn. That would be one way I think we can get them to embrace a change in our energy economy. But we also have to acknowledge, if we're looking at the evidence, we're looking at the facts, to reduce temperatures, to reduce CO2 emissions that are causing the rise in global temperatures, we have to continue to invest in carbon capture. That's not just true for coal, but that's also true for any fossil fuel. If we're going to reduce CO2 emissions, that has to be a component of our energy portfolio and the investments that we're making in energy.
All right, that's time.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think there's a misconception on where we're anti in this talk. It's not about being anti-coal miners, and that's typically what the perception is, that if you're anti-coal or you don't believe in the terminology clean coal because science says it doesn't exist, that you must be anti-coal miner, and that's just not the truth. The reality is this industry is dying on its own, and that's because technology is killing it. And rightfully so, that's just the way the economy works. And with coal, we have to realize that these jobs are not going to come back. The coal companies are actually pulling more out of the ground now than they did 10 years ago, and yet they're using 1/4, 1/5 of the labor. So when we say we've got to keep our end of the deal with the coal miners, we should have been doing that 10 years ago, saying, well, you're pulling more out of the ground, why are you laying people off? And the reality is that's mechanization. And that's just the way, technology works. And when we look at what the solution to this problem is yes, we know we have to embrace renewables, because that's where the jobs are going. Dean said it perfectly, there's 1,700% increase in these jobs compared to coal. But we also have to look at how do we get coal miners interested in these programs. And there's two stages of that. First of all, we have to go and fight for them based on that promise that they were given. And we got to say, hey, your pensions were killed by the coal miners. We failed you. And now it's our turn to step up and take care of you because your pensions were stolen by the coal companies and the conglomerates. Now it's time for us to pay for your retooling and your retraining. So we have to have a nationwide coal county revitalization program where we put money into these coal counties and really improve their chances to create jobs.
Very good.
Good first one. Now we bring it back and we'll repeat the process. Sorry, Jim.
I'm Melissa Dury. I'm with Action Metro East. And my question is, what role, if any, should public money play in funding private schools?
And I'll put a timer over here so you can watch the time.
So I'm first on this?
Yeah.
Okay. None.
Sorry, yeah.
It's an interesting question because it's a private school for a reason. I don't know why we're talking about public funding in private schools. So.
You guys are just going to use the 2 minutes all together.
He took my answer. None. All right. There's no reason for us to fund those schools. There may be reasons, I don't think this is on. There may be reasons for us to assist them to help them adapt some of their public curriculum to their format so their students get as good an education as they might get in public schools, but it's not our job to shove money down that. That's their choice. But it is a responsibility of the Department of Education to make sure that their schools conform to the basic minimum education requirements. And they don't preach falsehoods or science denial, things like that. So, same answer, none. All right, go to the next question.
Okay. I think. All right. Should we keep the microphone, or can you guys hear okay without the microphone?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Just throwing softballs.
So we're just making sure that it's a softball, because if it wasn't, we want to know.
All right. The Affordable Care Act is a landmark achievement that eliminated the worst aspects of the U.S. health insurance markets, but was hamstrung by Republicans in how it was implemented and funded. Few will argue that the status quo is acceptable, but proposals range from returning to a pre-ACA marketplace with all of its flaws, such as the AHCA, to Senator Sanders' recently introduced single-payer plan. David Bequette, we'll start with you. What do you see as the next steps to fix how healthcare is addressed in the United States? No microphone,
No microphone.
just project.
Yeah,
It's
no,
too-
that's so much better. So I'm surprised they fit that in 500 characters. So we should go towards a Medicare for all single payer program. Okay? There's no doubt about this, and most of you know my personal story on this. In 2011, before Affordable Care Act came about, we had a medical incident with my son that left us in tens of thousands of dollars of debt because we had inadequate insurance. And here's the thing. We should be born in this country with health care. Period. There should be no paperwork. There should be no paperwork. There should be nothing more than you have health care because it's a basic right. Let Americans stress over other things like working, getting a job, and starting businesses, and there's so many things that having health care causes, or not having health care causes problems with people. It's small business owners shut down their businesses because they can't afford health care for their employees and themselves. Parents worry about their kids and they go into financial ruin when they go to get a medical appointment or to face an emergency because they don't have insurance. It's 2017, greatest country in the world, and we're talking about people's lives and healthcare, and we shouldn't be having this conversation anymore. So Medicare for all, single payer, it's the solution, and we can afford it. We're spending $4 trillion on it anyway. We might as well put it to good use.
Brendan, you want to take next?
Yes, sure. Same question?
Same question.
Well, let me just say, I think we need a reality check in terms of where we find ourselves right now. We have aspirations, where we need to go, which in my mind is what really my faith teaches me, is that healthcare is a human right. It is an absolute right that we are born with. It is a fundamental right. But where we are right now is we have a group of people, a powerful few, an elite, that are trying to destroy what was done with the Affordable Care Act, the progress that was made under the Affordable Care Act. And we have to fight them tooth and nail to try to preserve what has been done. Not just preserve it, but then gradually expand it. My wife and I, this last summer, we buried our niece. She had brain cancer, and she fought for many years, and she had health care coverage through that fight. And when her life came to an end, she had a hospice nurse. She had someone for her mom and dad to help make sure that that end-of-life process was not cruel, it was not inhumane, and they were able to do that because of what we fought for under the Affordable Care Act. And that is what they are trying to take away. That's what we have to fight for. So I just say, let's keep our eye on the ball. We know where we need to go. But right now we are in a survival mode, folks. We have a serious threat to the progress that was made. Do we have some changes we need to make? Absolutely. Are there some fundamental things we have to work on to shore up what we have? Absolutely. But we got to fight like hell to preserve what we got under the Affordable Care Act and make it even stronger. Thanks.
I'll sell you my 2 minutes for $10.
Let's see what I got.
Healthcare should be like a butcher shop. You should walk in, you should take a number, you should sit down. When they call your number, you should get your health care. You're done, you go home. It should not be so hideously complex you cannot make sense of the forms. I have 7 years of graduate school. I see this crap come through the mail about health care, Medicare, Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C, Schedule D, only this, do that, do this. I can't make sense of it, and I'm an educated person. What about Joe Sixpack? What about the backhoe operator? What about the little old lady whose glasses don't quite focus well enough anymore? They cannot make head nor tails of that. But it's made complex to confuse us and allow them to grift our money away from us. Healthcare Healthcare is a $6 trillion a year business, and they're not going to leave a grain on the table for us. And there's enough money there for everyone to get healthcare. And they give us horror stories about, oh, people steal healthcare. Nobody steals healthcare. Healthcare is something people do as a precaution or as a last resort. Nobody says, oh, that colonoscopy was so much fun, I'm going to get 6 of them next week. It just doesn't happen. People do not steal healthcare. And if we couple this with preventive medicine, all of a sudden, preventive medicine is cost effective. If you see somebody who has a weight problem or a sugar problem, you say, look, we're going to get you a dietitian. We're going to get you a health club membership. We're going to talk to you about this. We're going to stay on track and make sure you lose some weight and get exercise and get your cardiopulmonary up. And all of a sudden, person's not on dialysis. 40% of our Medicare goes to dialysis because people eat white sugar with a shovel. If we did away with these destructive habits that are caused by advertising and corporations and stuff, we could have a healthcare system and a healthy population and do it for the same money. The Canadians are not smarter than we are. The Germans are not smarter than we are. The English are not smarter than we are. How come we don't have this?
Lightning round.
Wait, with the human, right?
Correct? Yes. Sure. Lightning round. Lightning round. You've got a yes or no question. You have 30 seconds to give any kind of follow-up you want to make to clarify.
But to be quite honest, we don't really need to do this one. Our first lightning round question is universal health care a human right? Well, we've got 2 yeses. Dean, is that a yes,
Yes.
from you? Okay, there
All right,
we go.
we're gonna
Lightning
go.
round, over.
Hey, we got one more.
But to make up for that,
Would you support a clean DACA bill?
Meaning a DACA bill that's not attached to anything else. We're going to give the DACA recipients all the rights they need. Go. Dean,
Start
go
with
first.
Dean.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes?
You don't punish kids.
There we go. All right.
That brings us around to round 2. That means it is time for the next round of introductions. And now we're going to have Brendan Kelly. We're going to give you your 2 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next set of questions.
I'll remain seated because I'm sure we got a lot of questions we want to get to, so I won't be long. Many of you know me, many of you I see out there are familiar faces I've known for a long, long time, and it is an honor for me to be able to have you here with me. Folks that are here are new, I'm just meeting for the first time. It is an honor for all of us to be up here, to be able to have you participate in choosing our leaders. This is the way it is supposed to be. This is the way it is supposed to work. People are supposed to participate. I came to this place 35 years ago when my mother and father were stationed at Scott Air Force Base. It's a very important part of Southern Illinois. And this place became my home. I love the people here. I love how my family has grown being part of this community. And it was an amazing thing for me to be able to serve in a United States Navy and go all over the world and then know that this was the place that I wanted to come back to. And after I got out of the Navy, I got involved a little bit in local politics at the law school, and I worked in East St. Louis for a while, and then I became a assistant prosecutor, and then eventually I became your state's attorney here in St. Clair County. And I will tell you, 6 months ago, probably like many of you, you were wondering, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do about what's going on in our country? And I did not think I'd be running for Congress. You guys probably didn't either. And you probably didn't think you'd be here part of some activist group. But here we are, because I think we can all feel it in our gut. We can feel it in our heart that things are deeply, deeply wrong. And it's not a question of this part of the party or that part of the party or any party succeeding over another party. It's a question of whether or not this country is going to continue to exist. Whether or not this country is going to keep moving forward, whether or not this country is going to be the country that we all believe in, whether America will still be America. And that's what's at stake, and that's why I'm running.
All right, where are we at then? Who's going to take the first one? Is it Kelly or?
Let's do Brendan. We'll
Brendan?
shift, and then shift again.
Go to Bill.
Back in.
Okay, cool. Just making sure I know where we're at. All right, to take up on that theme then. All right, next question. Another week, another upward revision from Facebook regarding how many people saw Russian propaganda through their advertising system. We're now up to more people having seen the propaganda than the number of people who voted in the election. Combined with the news that Illinois' election system was penetrated by Russian hackers, and voters are understandably concerned about protecting the integrity of our elections and our election process. What do you see as the necessary changes, and how will you work to bring those changes about?
Necessary changes to protect the integrity of
The
our
integrity of the election process.
Well, there may be some legislative remedies in terms of what those social media outlets have a responsibility to do. I honestly think the best thing would be not to impose some strict regimen where we are starting to pick winners and losers in terms of how social media is portrayed. I think that's a dangerous path for us to start having the government be censors. But if there is evidence that someone is criminally trying to influence our elections, through dark money, through foreign money, through expenditures that are coming from shell corporations, and they are deliberately manipulating the American populace because they're our enemy, then I think there may be some legislative remedy. But I think the most important thing to counter what's going on is for all of us to open our eyes, for all of us to educate ourselves, to all of us to not sit on our couches and not just scroll on our phones, but check things out ourselves, ask some tough questions. Educate ourselves, do exactly what you're doing here. Come out to things, participate in things, be involved, take your democracy back, participate in any way that you can, educate yourselves. So I think that's the best way, but I think we have to be alive, awake, and alert and paying attention to what's going on. And I think we have to be very, very careful about the foreign money under End Citizens United that's coming in and dark money that's coming in and how that is influencing our election system. I think that means we're going to have an amendment to our Constitution.
So I think this has a two-part answer. First is the technology question. You know, what the social media companies are telling us is they can track this stuff back to Russia. And although I believe in freedom of speech for Americans, there's no reason why we should allow for foreign companies who have no vested interest in America other than to destroy our democracy to purchase ads on our social media platform. In fact, you cannot buy an ad from America that shows up in China. You can't do that because the Chinese country of China has blocked that so that they don't have other countries messing in their media, in their propaganda, in their business answer. So that's the first part. The second part is this money and politics thing. I think one of the solutions, and by the way, people are never going to put down their cell phones, so it's only going to get worse. We know that. There's not going to be a revolution where everybody just throws their cell phones out and says, now it's time to educate ourselves in the books again. We're going to be on our cell phones for a long, long time. But we also need to, as a government, we need to start getting rid of all this money out of politics, period, so that there is no dark money in this game. We don't need PACs to support candidates. Even the best PACs with the best intentions should only be information centers, not campaign funders. Okay? I almost don't want people to clap, so I can get to the
Clap for 2 minutes.
And I think when we go through the night, we're going to hear a lot from at least my side about money and politics, because I think almost every major issue, from opioids to border control, all of this stuff has something to do with money and politics. So I'll leave it there.
Good. All right.
Well, I'm going to get some extra time here because he said a bunch of stuff I was going to say. Get the money out of politics, period. That's simple. Get the 6 words. Get the money out of politics. Now, the problem is they've still got the money and they still want influence. So it's going to be like whack-a-mole. They're going to find other channels and other ways and other things to do it. But if you have to rigidly enforce the fact that you cannot buy influence. You cannot sway people by throwing tons of money. Boston, the last election, spent something like $20 a head for his votes. He might as well just mail us $20. But, I mean, that's what it worked out to. And the problem is, okay, if the Democrats get $1 million this time, last time Barrett Civic got $1 million, I believe. Okay, Boss had 2.3 million from the Tea Party and all Mercers and Cokes and all those people. If things get widgy for them, he'll have 5 million. If they get really widgy, he'll have 10 million. They are not going to give up Southern Illinois. They're not going to give up the lower half of the state of the land of Lincoln because they're Republicans. And regardless of Boss' merits, they're going to shove money down our throats against us, and it's going to tell. You're going to see a certain percentage of the voting electorate will be a byproduct of that money shoved in there. And it has nothing to do with facts or what is really needed for our country. So that's